Well, good morning, everybody. It is genuinely a treat for me to be here because I have heard all about you. I've heard about your church. I've heard about you. It's so wonderful to see this beautiful place and your beautiful faces. My dear friend Barbara Eldridge has told me all about you. I hear about the things that are going on here and the exciting things that you're involved in, and so it's my pleasure to be with you this morning. You know, I've been recently thinking about some things. And when I was putting together my talk today, the title of which is Living in a Consciousness of Good, I got to thinking about how I have taken some flack over the years. I have been told that I was too positive, too optimistic, maybe a little too Pollyanna-ish. You're not taking this seriously enough, they said. Not everyone has as charmed a life as you do, someone said. That's just a bunch of psychobabble, I heard. And there is really bad stuff happening out there, you know. Well, all of that, and most of that came from my family members, by the way. I guess they have the most history with my comments and my sometimes sunnier outlook. It caused me to question myself and really think about, well, what am I missing here? How should I be? What should I do? But I have to tell you, when I started learning about this new thought philosophy that we're all part of, when I started learning to be a religious science practitioner back several years ago, helping others implement the science of mind philosophy or the new thought philosophy into their lives, I was really validated because there I was instructed not to go down into the depths of despair with the people that I would be helping. That wasn't serving them, that I needed to be their spiritual guide and shine that light for them to come up out of the depths of despair and to help them. That don't do no good whatsoever for me to have that ain't it awful attitude or to commiserate with them. So instead, I was to hold the light, shine that light, and wait for them and help them see that there is goodness on the horizon and that things can turn around no matter the change, because change is constant. We all know that saying, that the only constant in life is change. And it's everywhere. And it moves us in all kinds of directions, and it takes hold of us, and it turns our lives upside down sometimes. But we can make it work for us. And that was the message that I learned to impart to people, that we can make change work. Yes, I know bad things happen. We all know that. But we have a choice in how we choose to look at it and how we choose to process it and how we choose to talk about it and help others through it. You know, I think we all experience those periods of where we're dwelling on the bad or something that's depressing. I mean, just listen to the news. If we get sucked into the news, that's what we hear, and that becomes the focus, and fear becomes the focus. And what I've noticed, even with some of those family members, they're living in fear, and they're afraid to come out and live life fully. They're afraid to get out and drive or experience new people or new things because they're sucked into the statistics and the news of what could happen, of what might happen, and they're not living life as fully as they might. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science and the science of mind philosophy, all again part of the New Thought family, like Unity, wrote much about this consciousness of good, the omnipresence of God that we all hear about. He spoke of living in a consciousness of good. And so I started processing that and thinking about what does that mean? And what helped me was to think of it in terms of good with a capital G, like God, a capital G. God's goodness. God everywhere, all at once. Right here, right now, surrounding us. A divine gift, and another capital G, a divine gift of goodness. And another principle, that of unification, of unity, that we are one with God, that there is no separation, that goodness of God flows in us, through us, and as us. We are inherently good, being these creatures of God, being these creations of God. I've even heard us called godlings. Anybody ever heard that term? We are little godlings. There is one power in the universe, and we are connected to it. We are connected to God. We are divine creations. We are vessels, even, allowing God to experience life through us, in us, as us. And we believe that God is right here dwelling within us. And in New Thought, we believe there is no separateness. There is no some angry being out there that is at its only whim, exercising punishment or judgment upon us. We don't believe that. We believe that God is right here. We are one with it, and we have choices as to how we will live our lives. So taking that a step further, that reminds me that my actions and words then, if God is right here where I am, right within me, living through me, experiencing life through me, as me, I need to act in my highest and best because God's right where I am every moment of every day and says yes to all of my desires and to all of my actions and my words, allowing me to make these choices and experience the consequences. God is living through me, and the goodness is mine if I so choose it. Well, if that's the case, and I'm a vessel, and so are you, then shouldn't we be taking the utmost care of these vessels and being gentle and balanced and kind to ourselves? We are human, though, and it always comes down to choice of how we will remember God at our core and what it will take each of us to remember God at our core. So even when there is seeming chaos out there in the world, when we're out of sync with what's going on, maybe in discord, even with a loved one or somebody in the workplace, just disharmony happening all around us, something can trigger us to remember that God is right here, right where I am, and God and I can do this. We can do this because God is here, that amazing power. And if I'm listening through all that muck and mire, I hear that little voice, that little divine Pollyanna, if you will, saying, you got this. We can do this. We're here together. If I listen and I choose. You know, one of my favorite Ernest Holmes poems, he was quite prolific and wrote a lot of poetry. I wanted to share one of the last stanzas of a poem he wrote that sort of influenced my talk today. He said, "Today is the day that God has made, and we are glad in it. And when the evening time comes, the cool shadows of peace shall fall across our pathway, and the quiet of the night shall enter into our souls. And the beatitude of the Spirit shall flow through us as a river of life. We shall sleep in peace and wake in joy and live in a consciousness of good. For God is over all, in all, and through all." God everywhere, all at once. There's that message again. Right here now, right here with you and me, allowing us to live in a consciousness of good. You know, I am not affiliated with any particular church at the moment. Yes, I came up through religious science, and I spent a lot of time at the Religious Science Church, now Centers for Spiritual Living in Vista, which has now moved to another location. I was with an independent church in Carlsbad and became a minister through the Emerson Institute. And I realized after spending a lot of time working in churches that my work, too, as a minister, and we are all ministers, by the way, when we are involved in this philosophy and sharing that philosophy and living that philosophy. My work is out in what I do on a Monday through Friday basis, and I want to share a little bit about that with you today. I coach and teach job seekers. And when I'm doing that, I notice that people tend to get caught up in statistics. And I especially noticed that back in 2008. 2009, 10, 11, when the economy was very bad. Unemployment rates were high. We kept hearing numbers of the unemployment rising and people running out of benefits and the numbers of people that were giving up and people over 50 having such trouble. All those statistics, all those numbers, all those bad news, all that bad news that we were bombarded with, and statistics. And it brought to mind what Mark Twain said, or what he made famous, a saying about statistics. Some of you might know this. He said, there are 3 types of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. Well, that certainly rang true for me back then, because I was working with very upset, unsettled people who'd been laid off, who were getting stuck in those statistics and thinking they had no hope because they were stuck there and worrying about it, and they were becoming victims of other people's words and other people's surveys and numbers, etc. So in dealing with those perceptions and in trying to help untangle all of that so that I could help them, I reminded them they didn't ask you specifically, did they? Or they didn't survey you specifically, or you're not part of that group, are you? You don't want to go down there where it feels so bad. Come back up here. And I realized I was shining the light. Come on back up so we can work and do the good work to help you get back out there and employed. So I talked to them about getting out there, finding that job of your dreams, regardless of what the economy's doing. Regardless. And I saw that happening all the time. Regardless of what the news and the statistics were, people were finding jobs. I worked with them all the time. I told people, let's focus on your good. Let's focus on your strengths. Let's focus on what you do well and what you bring to employers, and let's work on that. Let's beef up that resume. Let's help you learn how to promote yourself and talk to people and convince employers that you are the right person for that job. Be a victor, not a victim. So these words and these statistics can really throw people off. And I still run across people today that say, wow, I remember those statistics, is that still true? And I'll say, no, it's not. Let me tell you some stories. Let me tell you some real life examples. I had a young man that I was working with earlier this summer, and we got on the phone together, and he said, I don't know how to do this. He said, what do I say to people? I was fired. I said, wait a second, let's untangle that word right there. You were not fired. Fired, that has a connotation related to performance or bad behavior on the job. Your job was eliminated. The company reorganized. Your job went away. That's what you say to people, and that happens all the time. Well, I ended up losing touch with him, but I finally heard from him a few months later, and he said, I'm getting a new job. He said, and I want to thank you for that first and only conversation, really, that we had, because you helped me untangle that word and look at a different perspective. I realized I wasn't fired. My job ended. It happened. It was a change, and I've adjusted, and now I've moved on. So he was a victor, not a victim. I was so proud of that, of helping him change that perspective. So during this time, when I'm doing this work, this time of chaos, this time of upset, I empathize with them and I understand what they're going to. There's a whole slew of emotions that go into dealing with change after all. But I help to encourage them and get them to that point of where they can see the good on the horizon, the place where their best qualities, their dreams, their ideas can converge into that one job or that ideal situation that they've been looking for. I help them get clear on what their knowledge, their strengths, their abilities, what all of that is to help them be of benefit and to serve them out in the workplace. And some of my clients even say, this is the opportunity for me to turn things around and to search for that job, that passion, to follow my bliss. And I say, hooray, hooray for you, because you're turning something negative around. You're looking at it from the perspective of good, the goodness. And you know, it's not really until we're in that position of serving ourselves, of having things being in sync with who we are, of being authentic, that we can then really serve other people. So it is such a wonderful piece of news to hear somebody say, I'm in sync with what I'm doing. I am utilizing the strengths and the gifts and talents that I have, and it's all working perfectly. They are on the path of goodness. They are living God's goodness. By the way, I want to mention back to Pollyanna, you know, she even had bad days. After all, if you remember the movie or the story, she did break her leg. She fell out of a tree. She was defying her aunt's rules about staying in the house. She climbed out the window, fell out of the tree, broke her leg, and she was in a period of despair, laying in bed, not being able to move. And it took all those people that she'd been shining the light for to come back around and say, hey, come on, back up, you can do this. It takes all of us to help shine the light and share our perspective and help each other out of our troubles. That's our ministry. That's when we're ministering. Do you think that this idea of Pollyannaism or being optimistic or this, do you feel like that's a naive? Do you feel like it's irresponsible? Do you feel like it's head in the sand? I don't either. No, absolutely not. It's because we have the opportunity, we have the knowledge, we have the awareness of new thought philosophies of God living within us and that goodness being available to us, that we can share it with other people. And I see that as my job, my duty, all of our jobs, our duties. We can't unknow this philosophy or unknow this stuff we learn in our churches. We need to take it out and spread the word. Because we all have different perspectives, different viewpoints, different ways of seeing the same thing. And on most days, I choose to see the good. I choose to see the positive. I choose to see God everywhere. You know, my coaching practice now is kind of taking a turn. It is pivoting toward another direction in a way, in another area of my interest, and that has to do with people of a certain age who are looking at retirement now. What is that word? Yeah, what does that word even mean? There are a whole slew of people out there now that are turning that old definition on its head. Retirement does not mean retirement from years ago. It can be whatever we want it to be. So now I'm looking at people going through that and thinking, what do I do now? What's next for me? And so I'm working with people that are facing those kinds of changes, helping them pivot to a new direction. And then along with that, with many women I talk to especially, they're thinking about, okay, what do I do now that the kids are gone? And oh my gosh, I'm getting older, and what does this age thing mean? Do we have to fall into the trap of what the advertisers say? Are we now magnets for wrinkles and problems and aches and pains? No, absolutely not. We are absolutely not. We get to decide how people treat us. We get to decide how we will live our lives. And when we're out there demonstrating that goodness and demonstrating what we bring to the table and the strengths and the power and the knowledge that we have, people can't help but be attracted to that and see us differently. We get to express that divine good because we are inherently good. I listened to a quick video the other day of a woman talking about aging, and she said, I realized that my knee hurts, and I thought, well, of course it hurts. It's 65 years old. But then I got to thinking, wait a minute, my other knee doesn't hurt, and it's 65 years old. And by the way, my elbows and my ankles are 65 years old. They don't hurt either. So why don't I focus there? Why don't I focus on the good versus the bad? And you know, I think we all face these things. I've had to look at myself lately too, and you know, see the birthdays coming by and realizing that another birthday ending in a 0 is not that far away. And oh my gosh, you know, how come I can't lift things that I used to lift, or why does my back hurt, etc. And I could stay there. I could, and I have, for a little while, stayed there thinking, oh no, woe is me, and oh, ain't it awful, and oh my gosh, things are terrible. But then here comes that voice, that sensibility of God, when I pay attention to it, my own personal little Pollyanna again saying, hey, wait a second, hello, there's another way of looking at this. Choose the good. Choose the good. God, goodness, unity with all that is good, we being expressions on earth, inherently good because of that unending, powerful, natural connection that flows in us, through us, and as us. We get to recognize that. We have the choice to recognize it and focus on it, or not. We might say, I want to wallow a little bit longer. I'll see you later. But then we get to create what we want in our lives. We are inherently good. So over my years of studying these things and being involved in the philosophy of New Thought and Science of Mind, I've thought of some tools that will help pull me out of and away from the ain't it awfuls, and I thought I'd share some of those ideas with you today. First of all, expect it. Expect the good. Ernest Holmes talked about that. He wrote about the expectation or the anticipation of good, walking into something new or unusual, but expecting it to turn out well. So I think of that when I'm teaching. I teach a lot virtually, so webinars over the phone and through the computer. And if I'm facing a new set of material or a new audience or a client that I've heard is really, really picky and they want things just so, I could go to, oh no, what's wrong with this? Everything that's going to go wrong, and this could happen, that could happen. Or I could focus on what's right. And in most cases, I choose to think about what's right. I noticed just the other day, I had one of these situations and I went to, oh no, oh my gosh, oh here we, blah, 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 chatter, chatter, chatter. And then I thought, wait a second, what's right about this? Okay, what's right about this is I've delivered this particular material before. This is just a new audience. It's got a little bit different technology. God, right here at my center, we can do this. We got this. New people that we might meet, a whole new group of people walking into a class where we're learning something new, that can feel unsettling. But if we think about what's right, who might I walk away from here knowing now and connecting with? Wow, a whole different perspective. We had a remodel done at our house this summer, and this whole kind of thinking came up for me because I thought, thinking of the stories I'd heard, oh no, what's going to go wrong? Oh my gosh, oh this, that, this, and the other thing. But I remembered these words about expecting the good. And let me tell you, it took a lot of work for me to let go of worrying about these strangers in my house and do they know what they're doing? I mean, I'm not a plumber or a contractor or a painter. Some mornings I would think maybe I knew a little bit more than them because I was worrying so much. But I got back to expecting the good and building trust and getting to know these people and talking to them and letting them do their thing. And wouldn't you know it, lo and behold, we have received the good. Our remodel is done, and it's beautiful. And it was wonderful people. It was a great experience. So expecting the good, walking into something new and saying, what's right? What's right? Not what's wrong, but what's right with this? The other thing that I like to do is remind myself to notice the good constantly. Just know it. Know it's there and see it. Like in my backyard, my office looks out on my backyard, and I sometimes will look out there going, oh my gosh, look at the yard work, look at the weeds, look at everything overgrowing, look at that. And then I'll think, wait a minute, what's right? Wow, that tree is beautiful. Those flowers are blooming. Yeah, there's some weeds. However, I'll get to those later. Let me stay with the beauty first. Let me stay with what's right. Or I might open my closet and say, I have nothing to wear. Or I could say, look at that collection of casual clothes. I bet somebody else would love to share in some of those. So it's just a tweak of a thought, a tweak of a perspective that helps me get back on track. And I realize those things are very simple and very basics, yard work and clothing. But anything that comes up that I might go to the bad, I try to find what's good about this situation. The next thing I do is be grateful. Just be grateful for all of the innumerable blessings. Even if I'm not feeling so great, I can be grateful that I had a piece of paper for the printer or a pen to write down my complaints about something. And that takes me back to being grateful and looking around saying, oh, wow, I have so much to be grateful for. Just absolutely so much. And it takes my attention away from the negative. And sometimes I might have to say thank you for this ugly, yucky thing that came up or this bad feeling so that now I can find the good. And now I can get back to finding the good. Thank you. Thank you for that. And sometimes that takes a little while, like a job seeker who loses their job. It takes them a little while to see that it's an opportunity, that it's something to be grateful for. Something else I learned is looking up. I mean, literally looking up. I learned to do that several years ago. My dad passed away about 5 years ago, and I would just sit out in the backyard and I would just look up. And it just took my focus away from the yucky stuff and the feelings. And it just reminded me that there is something bigger than me, something invisible to all of us, just working behind the scenes, some amazing hum of goodness going through the universe in the clouds, in the blue sky, in the rainy sky, in the snow, in the thunder, whatever it is. There's something working that's completely out of my human hands and mind's control. That is really a wonderful feeling, to just look up and remember. I have to remind myself to do that. And then finally, my other tool for finding the good is getting perspective, staying connected. The group that I'm in, that Barbara spearheads every week, is so important to me. It's a small group of us, and we get together every Thursday morning and talk about our businesses and what's going on, but we're connecting with each other, and that is so important, to stay connected, to get out there and be involved, be with other people, play, have fun, play with kids, be around kids, laughing, play with animals, talk to the dogs, etc. You know, during this remodel, we got an opportunity to connect with our neighbors that we really hadn't done much of before. And so our two neighbors and a couple down the street, we've been able to connect saying, hey, how did it go with your remodel? And wow, can we come look at your house and see what you did? And it's just been this very rewarding community building connection that we've made. And as a matter of fact, that reminds me, one of the neighbors right next door, they gave us keys to their house, and I would utilize their house for my work while the remodel was going on, and every so often go in and check on their dogs when their dogs were alone and they were on vacation, etc. Well, the other day, I went over to check on the dogs because it was hot outside, and I let them in, a Chihuahua about this big and a German Shepherd about this big. Friho and Ethan. Ethan is the German Shepherd. So I let them in, and we're talking and playing a little bit, and they're settling down to get cooled off and take a little nap. And I found myself dozing off, taking a little nap. And I remember something woke me up, and it was one of the dogs had rustled around or was moving toward me. And I looked over, and both dogs were kind of moving slowly toward me, looking in my eyes. And it was just a connection. I know they're dogs, but it was that connection. So not discounting the connection that we make with other beings. Yes, people and socializing and talking and having fun and laughing, but also our pets or other people's pets. Connecting. Do I do these things every day? No. I read the news, I get caught up in statistics and the ain't it awful attitude. It's challenging work. It's a very tall order, this living in a consciousness of good. It really is. Yet, here are some tools, and we all have our own tools, to help us get back on the path to remembering God and seeing the good. Because even when it doesn't seem so, God is everywhere, all at once. Thinking about first responders, thinking about service animals, thinking about experts who share their knowledge with us and who soothe our aching spirits when we need it. God is everywhere, working through those people that we call heroes, too. And, you know, we talk about God's abundance, about this immeasurable, immense flow of goodness in the universe. And maybe you've heard the saying about how most of us are showing up with a little teaspoon, saying, could I just have a little? When we could show up with a big haul truck or a wheelbarrow saying, yeah, bring it on, pour it on, I'm ready for this goodness. We are inherently good. We are God's creations. We can have that good. It's our choice. It is definitely our choice. Last week I was out walking in the neighborhood after the bad news had hit the airwaves, and I was feeling pretty down, and I bet a lot of you were too, and I needed to get out and take a walk and maybe experience some nature. Well, I was out near this kind of protected area in our neighborhood, a little preserve area, and something kind of touched me. It caught my attention, and it might have been just a breeze, but I noticed it took me from that bad, walking down, looking at the bad, feeling to the good, where I was able to, wow, look up and see the blue sky. And what I heard was this chattering and singing of birds. And I thought, wow, that is always there. That will always be there. They don't need me. They don't listen to the news. They don't know what's going on in the human realm. But that's always going to be there, that little sliver of goodness. And so it reminded me to tap into that and remember how that good helped me feel. And it made me feel renewed. It made me feel better. It made me feel more connected. In closing today, I want to leave you with the last two verses of a popular poem. It's called Desiderata. It was written by Max Ehrmann back in 1927. Some of you are familiar with it. It's very popular and widespread, but these last two stanzas are very powerful to me. He wrote, "Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it's clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding just as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be. And whatever your labors and aspirations in this noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. Because with all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, the world is still a beautiful place. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy." It truly is a beautiful place, if we remember. It's filled with God. It's filled with God's goodness. It's in us, around us, and through us. And we have the choice, the blessing, the gift of living in a consciousness of good. And so it is.